Hello, friends of Studio Brule. This is Steve Brule, and it is coffee time. A time to look at some of the things that have come across my desk in the past few days, and it's been a few days. Like the last one was Friday, and today is Tuesday. Oh, sorry, Thursday. Thursday already? Wow. Time is going by fast. Welcome to the show, everyone. We've got Michael Keller, Z Overman, and Fiddlesticks McWhiskers. I don't remember Fiddlesticks here before, but welcome to the show, everyone. See some of the regulars out there. I want to draw your attention to my VIP club membership to the patriarchy. And this is a new card, as you might know. And before we get started into the meat of the material here, because this is serious stuff. This is very serious stuff we're talking about today. We're talking about the police, the military, the National Guards kneeling before terrorists. Now, this is a momentous moment. It's actually a very portentous moment, and we'll get into that shortly. But having drawn your attention to my VIP club membership card to the patriarchy, this authorizes me, of course, to comment upon the comings and goings of the evil global feminist empire that has its tentacles spread right around the world in thousands upon thousands of well-funded organizations. And as we saw in the past few days, their efforts, which have been going on since World War II with the likes of George Soros and his crowd trying to create a one world government, they have all but succeeded now. It is symbolic that the National Guard and the police are kneeling before Antifa. Antifa is a terrorist organization. It was identified as and called officially domestic terrorism by Trump only a day or two ago. And the police, the military have bowed before them. So just before we get into it, I want to just say a few things about the new card. I hope you like it. It's a proposed card. There are only two printed so far, not printed, but selected. I have taken number 1 for myself. Chapter 1, as you see here, member number 1. And this is of the Studio Brule chapter, which, if you look over to the far corner, you're going to see an image of Zeus, the king of the gods, who is angry and fed up. And he is sending Perseus, his son by a human woman, who has already successfully beheaded Medusa. He is sending Perseus out to do the same thing to feminism. It is long overdue. Feminism has grown to its strength right now on the inaction of men, the unwillingness of men to say no to women in general and just give them everything they ask for without any argument. Feminists have been pursuing unbounded rights with no restrictions on their behaviors accepted for the last God knows how many long time since the very beginning. Now, I am neither, by the way. This is Michael is suggesting. I am neither of these. These are our symbols. These are our leaders. Zeus, the king of the gods. We are sons of Zeus, if you will. We are Perseus, all of us. All of the MRA are Perseus. All of us who are active in tearing down feminism are Perseus. Perseus's task is to rout uncontrolled evil from the world, and feminism is in his sights. So, I wanted to get back on track here with a little bit of this preamble. This is a problem. and you see the aims of feminism when they say things like take back the night, and that they suggest that women should be able to walk everywhere they want, whenever they want, dressed however they want, whether they're strung out on drugs or alcohol, no matter what kind of people they're flirting with or inviting into their lives. They should be able to wander aimlessly like imbecilic children throughout the world, and there should be no consequences for them. The world should be made safe by men, no matter what the cost to men in effort and lives. They want to be able to attack men. They want to be able to kill their husbands. They want to be able to behave with complete malicious freedom at all times, everywhere, without consequences. And this was recognized in the traditions of the Greek gods traditions, the mystical traditions or mythological traditions of Greece. And I came across a symbol of this from Peter Wright, I believe it was, who suggested that there were some followers who literally bound Hera, the wife of Zeus, up with twine or rope for certain periods, because they recognized that women unbounded would absolutely destroy the world. And that is what we're seeing today with feminism. Feminism is women's deep, dark desire to behave with absolute no boundaries whatsoever and face no consequences for it. And that is entirely unacceptable. I'm sorry for the brief disruption there. Let's get straight into the material then. And here, I've just got a few things to set the tone. This is from Gary Buttersworth. Treating a black police officer like trash while protesting against racism. What do these people think? That we can have, that human behaviors and groups and mobs are just going to behave themselves without a restraining force before them? No, they don't. We have never behaved civilly without social restraints in the history of humanity, and human beings cannot be trusted to do so ever. So to stick your finger up to the police officer whose job it is to enforce the boundaries that we've all expected to adhere to in society is absolutely pathetically ridiculous. It is the behavior of a spoilt brat child who's spitting in the face of his father even as his father tries to protect his life. That's what this symbol really means here. Let's read what Gary says. If this picture doesn't wake you up to the incredible stupidity of these moronic leftists who are out protesting against, quote, systemic white-on-black racism from police, then your brain is well and truly fried. Thank you, Gary, for that. Absolutely true. And let's take a look at another one here. This, a police officer's hit by cars, shot, beaten in numerous cities on Monday night amid violent riots. These violent riots have been promoted, encouraged by the likes of George Soros and his favorite little pet group, the Antifa group. The Antifa group have been committing atrocities around the country, around Canada and the US for a decade, possibly more. Let's read on what Ben Shapiro has to say here. Now, Ben is saying, we are witnessing the essence of tyranny as cowardly city leaders refuse to crack down on riot. That is exactly what we're witnessing, but it's worse than that. It is worse than that. The police force, the National Guard, and possibly the military are disobeying Trump's orders. They're kneeling before Antifa and rioters. These are not people to be respected. They're bullies. And when bullies win, bullies get worse. And that is what we're going to find here. And there's all kinds of sides to this. There are people who literally or really believe that they are pursuing a movement of love and peace and equality, even though they're deluded in that. But there are those people that do believe that. And when they get in power, and they will through this kinds of bullying action, they've already bullied the police into humiliating them, which was the purpose of propaganda all along. I forget the name of the fellow who identified this. The true purpose of propaganda is to humiliate the people. They've now humiliated the police, the military, at least the National Guards, by forcing them to kneel before the terrorists. And we're going to see some video of that today. This cannot be overemphasized. Trump on Monday said that Antifa was domestic terrorism, and he's right. He's the only prominent figure that I've come across yet as a leader who's willing to call it what it is. And it is domestic terrorism. These are bullies. These are thugs and thieves. That is what they are. That is always what they've been, and it will be worse. And when the so-called moderates get in, because these people who are so-called talking about reparations and love and equity and all that, this is just the anti, your Melissa or whatever, being sweet to you, while her uncle with the baseball bat is beating you behind the door. When they get in, you know, they've been talking reparations. They've been using words like stolen land. Anyone who especially if you are white out there, you can bet your last dollar that these Antifa terrorists intend to take your land, your job, your money, everything away from you. That's what they see as reparations. So this is just the start, folks. This is just the start, and Trump is standing alone in calling out the truth here. Let's move along. And here's how this is incredible. This is telling you how deep and wide the insanity of, and this is all coming from the progressive left, especially from the feminists who have been pounding these messages. Their propaganda machine, war machine, has been incredibly effective. It's been at it for 60 years, and they've refined that, and they know exactly what they're doing. They run the media. They've programmed the public. Almost my entire family spent Tuesday putting black squares on their social media. Black squares, in other words, identifying and supporting the terrorists. And my family in Canada is pretty much typical of Canadians. They feel guilty about everything because they're told to feel guilty. And they've got to be nice Canadians saying sorry, sorry, sorry. You can never say sorry enough if you're a Canadian. Well, I'm not saying sorry. I'm saying, you Antifa, you're a bunch of frickin' domestic terrorists and bullies and thugs and petty thieves. And I'm not going to take a knee for you. I've known a lot of black people over my life, and I was married to a Jamaican American, and her entire family was successful, and they didn't go around thuggering people, and they came from a very poor farm in Jamaica. The reason these people aren't successful is because they're completely lazy, stupid, ignorant, arrogant idiots. They have plenty of opportunity. They're just too frickin' lazy and bullyish to take up legitimate opportunities. So let's read how sick it's getting amongst all of our professionals spread wide through the community, in this case, the health professionals. Reading from the top. Public health experts say the pandemic is exactly why protests must continue. Can you believe even the headline of this? Their twisted little minds are beyond saving. Let's read this quote here, and it's rather long. I apologize for that. But read this with me. Facing a slew of media requests asking about how protests might be a risk for COVID-19 transmission, a group of infectious disease experts at the University of Washington, with input from other colleagues, drafted a collective response. In an open letter published Sunday, they write that, quote, protests against systemic racism which fosters the disproportionate burden of COVID-19 on Black communities and also perpetuates police violence must be supported. Is that insane or what? I mean, how many ways is that insane? It's incredible. The disproportionate COVID-19 has nothing to do with systemic racism. It has to do with being too freaking lazy or stupid to go up and build your own business and lift yourself out of poverty. It has to do with, instead of going and working, you're going and robbing stores, and that is exactly what's happening. In fact, in my very, very early days as a teenager, I dated a woman whose family lived in a project, and I can tell you right there that's full of thieves. They don't want to work. They have single mothers in there who are manipulating the 13, 14, 15-year-old boys to go out and rob stores and bring crap back to them. They sit there like little queens on their free government housing porches. So, perpetuates police violence. Systemic racism perpetuates police violence. What a bunch of crap. The police, there's enormous numbers of Black police officers. And I'll guarantee you, unless you have to be a complete moron to think that Black police officers are out there perpetuating, supporting or perpetuating systemic racism. This systemic racism thing is a bunch of crap. There is no systemic racism. All the racism that reflects Black people and minorities is positive support, free programs, extra money, extra support for universities, lowered bar of entries, as we saw at that school there, the green one where I forget his name, who was kicked out, the biologist who didn't want to play their games. Anyway, somebody in the comments would probably remember who that guy's name was. But there is no systemic racism against Blacks or minorities in Canada or the US. That is an ancient story. It's over. They're only keeping it alive for personal benefit. Let's move on. Reading from the top again. The letter and the experts who signed it make a case for viewing the protests not primarily as something that could add to cases of coronavirus, though they might, but as a tool to promote public health in and of themselves. Protests to promote public health. Isn't that brilliant? Why didn't we think of that before? We should all be out on the street vandalizing storefronts, throwing rocks at cops, because it promotes public health. You morons. Let's read on. Protests address, quote, the paramount public health problem of pervasive racism. There is no pervasive racism, unless it's against white men, because that is openly stated in the media every single day. The letter notes, reading on, we express solidarity and gratitude towards demonstrators, you mean rioters and thugs and thieves, who have already taken on enormous personal risk to advocate for their own health. Yeah, by stealing televisions and, as we will see, lemon pies even, and shoes, advocate for their own health. The health of their communities by destroying stores and burning down buildings and historical landmarks, and the public health of the United States. Have you ever read a bigger pile of crap in your life? I certainly haven't. Let's read this. By Tuesday afternoon, more than 1,000 epidemiologists, doctors, social workers, medical students, and other health experts had signed the letter. They are putting their moral support behind domestic terrorists. And if you think this is just the health professionals doing this, this is broad through our society across Canada and the US. I've been saying this for some time, but I don't think it can be saved at this point. The academia is already utterly destroyed. It is saturated in these progressive leftist feminists to the point where you cannot do proper research in a university today. They all simply compete to see who is the most ideological of the ideologues, who is most committed to the religion of feminism. And we're going to see in videos shortly just how much this has become a religion. I'm going to pause here for a moment and recognize Sean Tower. Thank you so much for your generous donation, Sean. And Sean says, look, Tony Timpa, exactly same as George, but white man doesn't fit agenda. By the way, my baby mama was West African, and she would agree with you. The United States, this is a political movement, and you're absolutely right, Sean. This is a political movement. It's not a justice movement. This is a political movement that's been funded by the wealthiest people in the world since World War II. They have been pursuing a one world government. They don't want the majority of people to have any freedoms. And this is for sure going to help destroy your freedoms. Let's read on here. It's not a coincidence that we're seeing protests against racism during a pandemic. This is not protests against racism, and we'll see why in a moment for that too. Racism is dangerous to public health because Black people experience disproportionate effects of the coronavirus, as Craven documented extensively. Racism causes coronavirus? No. Being in a poor community, being poor, puts you close together with other poor people, lots of whom can't afford proper health, and that helps spread disease, but that's not caused by racism. That's an insult to the thousands or millions of Black people who have worked hard and created a success for themselves in the US and lifted themselves from poverty. Some of them with help, some without help from governmental sources. But what we're talking about here are the lazy scumbag bullies who don't want to do the work themselves. Let's read on. Race. This is where they're so far off course here. It's not race, it's poverty. Race can affect how difficult it is to get a test. No. Being poor can. If you can't afford a bus ticket or a taxi ride to the test location, being poor can make you sick all of its own. And in fact, there was a giant meta study that came to that exact conclusion many years ago, probably 15 years ago. And they corrected for or controlled for all lifestyle habits like drinking and smoking and drug use and jobs, types of jobs. And what the study determined is that the single determining factor for good health was wealth. If you are wealthy, you are more likely to be healthy. It's as simple as that. And yet these people don't even refer to this extraordinarily big and extraordinarily rigorous study. Their crap is unsupportable nonsense. Race can affect how difficult it is to get a test, whether drugs and vaccines are designed to work for you, whether health professionals believe and listen to you. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense crap without support. Incarceration rates are higher for Black people. Yeah, because unfortunately, coming from those projects, there also crime rates are higher amongst Black people. This has been demonstrated. It's in the very crime statistics of FBI crime statistics. It's verifiable and repeated. And not all poor people commit crimes. So I'm not going to accept this crap excuse that, oh, well, they're driven to crime because they're poor. I know lots of Dominicans right here in Dominican Republic who are a lot poorer than the poor in those projects, and they don't commit crimes. This is an excuse. These people are building excuses for misbehavior. The virus thrives in prison, as are rates for diseases that in turn exacerbate COVID-19. Well, that may be true. Lots of things thrive in prison, including rape culture, the only place where a true rape culture actually exists. Quote, the reason why we have such high levels of diabetes, hypertension, and asthma is directly linked to structural racism. You will notice that in spite of this incredible lie, they have not one link to it. They may have some feminist hand-waving bullshit, but they don't have any study that has a direct link to structural racism and these health problems. That's absolute crap. And the way they're able to get away with this is because we have destroyed academia. Academia today is not capable of producing decent research anymore. The research is all monitored and policed by feminists who run the administration of the universities. You will get fired if your research project doesn't generate the results that feminists expect. That's how bad the universities has been. I'm going to pause here to acknowledge Michael Abbott for his generous donation to Studio Brûlé. Michael says, I am part Jewish, but I don't ask Germans to pay reparations for killing my ancestors. Intergenerational guilt is immoral. Yes, it's absolutely true. And there's many, many examples of this exact same thing here. If we go back long enough in history, every last one of us has some beef with some other group. And we could go out asking for reparations. It's the Hatfields and the McCoys all over again. It's absolute nonsense. Here, suggesting that diabetes, hypertension, and asthma are directly related to structural racism. And structural racism is this boogeyman vague thing that feminists have dreamt up where they can rubber stamp anything they want with it and call it, oh, that's structural racism. We got structural racism over there. That must be it. Where's the other boogeyman? Let's read on here. That link between racism and disease is why Aisha Apa, an infectious disease fellow at the University of California, San Francisco, signed the letter when she saw it circulating on Twitter. Quote, it is part of our job as infectious disease doctors to add our words of support. I'm almost suspicious that she got in there as an affirmative action pity admission to her doctorate degree. She calls racism, quote, one of the more dangerous infectious diseases. Well, that's because you're a lying feminist idiot. The explicit link between white supremacy and public health is why Dashana Fussell-Ware, that's a mouthful, a social worker and doctoral candidate at the University of Pittsburgh, put her name on the letter. Now let's have a look in a minute at who this woman is. And keep in mind that all of these people are getting their information from feminists. All of the research on this stuff, I'm using that word research with incredible looseness, because it's not research, it's propaganda. It's lies and propaganda that they're pumping out. But they're pumping them out all in adherence to strict feminist ideology. Read on here. She felt frustrated with a lack of responses from formal organizations. Quote, I need very public denouncements of racism and white supremacy. There is no legitimate white supremacy in the world today. There may be some small little groups of guys getting around, whipping themselves up in anger, and women pushing those guys on. Never forget that. Guys almost rarely act with those extremes if there isn't a woman pushing them or tempting them along that road. These kinds of actions involve both sexes all the time. As an aside there, imagine how fast the mafia and organized crime would end if women would not be involved with organized criminals. Those organized criminals do that stuff to buy expensive women at their side. If we're really serious about getting rid of the mafia and organized crime in general, then we would prosecute their wives along with them. And you would quickly see that no woman would date or even be seen in public with an organized criminal. But we're not serious about it, and we refuse to hold women accountable. But there they are, tempting the guys along and pushing them forward in their organized crime and petty thugs and the whole bit. But anyways, let's go on here. She says, Fussell-Ware, we're not going to condemn the protests. That was really, really important to me. You're not going to condemn looting, rioting, shooting police officers, pounding guys to death, kicking them unconscious. They're not going to condemn these things. They're going to condone those behaviors and they're justifying it by their fake creation of structural racism. Their fake creation. These people are building a rationale to be racist against white people and to take everything from them. Here, with absolutely no surprise, is Darshana Fussell Ware, some radical feminist who's being rubber stamped her little matchbook degree and who's going to be given credibility because she has PhD of gender bigotry behind her name. There you have her right there. And here she is, a proud native of Miami, Florida. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology with minors in English and human social development from University of Miami. Masters of social work. I swear to God, you would have to try very hard not to graduate from those programs. In fact, if you're an overweight black woman, you probably don't even have to show up or pay. They'll just mail you. Oh, I want a PhD in social work. I'm a black woman in Miami. I'm overweight. I can't go to school. Don't discriminate against me. Just send me it in the mail. And I'm not paying for the postage. And she'll still get it. These people are so freaking indoctrinated and stupid that they are part of destroying our culture. And here's the infectious disease expert. Surprise, surprise. White racism against white people is okay because I'm a black woman. This is what it comes down to. Let's read this. This is from the Wall Street Journal, one of the few journals out there that even tries to put out a reasonable article now and then. The Myth of Systemic Police Racism by Heather McDonald. Heather McDonald is quite a thorough researcher and quite an unbiased person in general. That's probably why feminists hate her. Hold officers accountable who use excessive force, but there's no evidence of widespread racial bias. It is absolutely true. But the truth is not going to gain any sway in feminist, bullying, domestic terrorist circles. Let's read this from the top. George Floyd's death in Minneapolis has revived the Obama-era narrative that law enforcement is endemically racist. On Friday, Barack Obama tweeted that for millions of Black Americans, being treated differently by the criminal justice system on account of race is tragically, painfully, maddeningly normal. This is Barack Obama stirring the race wars. Barack Obama is literally, he's not a stupid man. He knows he is stirring up racial tension when he says these things. He absolutely knows it and he wants to do it. He's in George Soros's company. These people want to stir up and back up and pay and fund the Antifa groups. This is an absolute tragedy that's going on right now, and I'm very pessimistic about Western culture, Canada and the US when I speak that. Europe is a different story, but I don't think it can be saved because there is not a strong enough and a big enough force against it. We have gone past the point of no return. Reading onward here. Mr. Obama called on the police and the public to create a new normal in which bigotry no longer infects our institutions and our hearts. Such a load of false, sympathetic, false, empathetic crap. They don't infect our institutions and our hearts. I lived in New York City part-time for many years, 4 or 5 years. And I lived and stayed outside of New York City in New Jersey quite a lot. There is a lot of interracial relationships, a lot of mixing. You can't go a day, you can't go an hour, you can't go 2 minutes out in public without being in an entirely mixed group. And I can say the only time I saw racism in New York City is when I was walking with my then black Jamaican wife on a main street, and one of these groups like the Black Panthers or whatever tried to tell my wife she was a traitor to black people for being with a white man. That literally is the only incident of racism I saw in those years in New York City and New Jersey area. And it was from a Black Panther type person. I don't know if that was their actual group. And it was against white people. He was trying to incite her in her guilt for betraying black people somehow because she was married to a white man. This idea that if there's any organized racism in the US, it's not by white people. And that incident, by the way, was loud and proud on the main street. No one of that group was even embarrassed about it. Nobody around took pictures. Nobody around confronted anyone about it. Let's read on here. This from Leonidas Johnson, obviously a black man from his picture. For every 10,000 black people arrested for violent crime, 3 are killed. For every 10,000 white people arrested for violent crime, 4 are killed. I'm going to keep tweeting this until someone can explain to me how this is possible if there is truly pervasive racial bias in policing. Exactly, Leonidas. There isn't. There isn't. That is absolute bullying crap that they are putting out there against the police and against the society. And it's all being pushed by the progressive left, especially the feminists. Let's read on. And this, Brian Lee Martinez summed this up quite succinctly. Thank you for this, Brian. Remember, the cops were fired, investigated, and one is under arrest, charged with murder, by the way. These riots have nothing to do about justice. Absolutely, Brian. This has absolutely nothing to do with justice. The cop who had his knee on Floyd's neck is under arrest for murder. 2 of the other cops are fired. This happened very, very fast. The riots happened even after this. There is no possible way to change a system and keep it legal and fair and make it faster than this already was. Look, we're always going to have we're human beings who go into every career. There's always going to be some who break or behave badly or are bad in who have bad intentions. The fact is, if it was structural racism, those people would be protected. They are not protected. They are prosecuted, disciplined, fired, arrested fast. We can't do it any faster than that. So just what kind of changes do these brain-dead morons really expect to make in the system? I know what they want. They want to just be able to walk up to that cop with a gun and shoot him in the head, vigilante style. They want lynching of people they disagree with. Mostly white people. They want to lynch white people. There's been a hatred on building and being pushed by the progressive left, specifically the feminists, for 60 years. Any further speed with dealing with an issue like this can only be done on the street as an execution. But that is what they want. Feminists have been pushing to make it legal for women to murder their own husbands. They're not happy enough with that. They're going to not stop with that. I'm going to pause here to recognize Sean Tower. Thank you so much for your support of Studio Brûlé, Sean. And Sean says, exactly same experience in Detroit. Also had brothers of Jamaican girl I was dating get into a fight. Also had black men surround me and my baby son, saying he wasn't mine and I was a kidnapper racist. This is the real story of racism that's going on in our culture. This is the real story. Thank you for this, Sean. And if there's systemic structural racism, it's against white people. They back up and support groups like Black Lives Matter, who advocate for killing people because they're white. They have actually said that. The leader in Toronto was tweeted out with impunity a couple of years ago. Leader of Black Lives Matter tweeted out that, "Dear Lord, please help me not kill white man today." And you know what? All of the structures of our culture defended her. Defended her. And the people who are pushing or trying to create a race war, incite race war, are the Obamas. Not just the Obamas. All of those deep state ex-presidents are on board with this, and we'll see that shortly. The George Bush, the Clintons, they're all on board. And Obama, even Jimmy Carter, is supporting Antifa and the domestic terrorists. And the reason is those guys are all deep state. Trump is the only non-deep state one of the bunch. Let's read on here. Let's have a good look at these signs, guys. Really read this very carefully. You can mention in the comments, you may have seen this meme already. The first sign on the left, this is a Jewish-owned business. And the sign on the right, Black-owned business. I'm sure there are female-owned business signs out there, Asian-owned business signs. Now, what is behind that? Think about this very closely, folks. Those store owners are unwittingly revealing that they know that the true target of riots and racism are white people. That is why they're advertising, saying, "I'm not a white person." That Jewish-owned business is really telling the rioters, don't hurt this business because it's not owned by a white man. The same thing on the other one, Black-owned business. Don't hurt this business because this business is not owned by a white man. Let that sink in, folks. All of the people in our culture know that it's dangerous to be thought a white man. Let that sink in. This is exactly what racism is. And it's widespread, understood. Nobody's saying it. They won't say it. They will not say, "Oh, I know the racism out there and the riots and the hatred is against white men." They're not going to say that. This is what they say right here, right there in that sign. They say, "Oh, pass us by because this is not a white man's business." And this other sign, those signs basically say the same thing. Pass us over. Don't destroy our business because it's not owned by a white man. Now read the top here. The implication of these signs is that it is perfectly fine, even virtuous, to attack white-owned businesses. That easily extends to white-owned homes and then just to white people. That is exactly how it started in Nazi Germany. I know there will be people out there saying, "Oh, geez, he's referring to Germany, the Nazis again. Oh my God, lose credibility because we're referring to the Nazis." Well, it's exactly the same thing. Why would I not refer it to Nazi Germany? It is exactly, and I'm going to blow my chance at monetization here. It is exactly the same fucking thing. It is perfectly legitimate to compare to Nazism when it's the exact fucking same thing happening. That's who these domestic terrorists are. They are our generation's Nazis. They want to usher in a world in which there is an acceptable target of racism and hate. They've already put it in the minds of the entire culture. Even white people are sitting there saying, "Oh, yes, I have to make reparations for something I had no part of." All right, let's move on from this. And here's how bad it gets, folks. Just let this one sink in. There's white parents out there, okay, and they are abusing their own little girl by making their own little girl hold a sign for the camera. That's how badly they want to virtue signal to the world. They're using their own little girl who looks about 5 years old or 4 years old to virtue signal to the world, humiliating their own little girl in public. Look here, I'm a privileged little white kid. That, what it says below there, literally says only Black Lives Matter. Only. That is, they deny it. Of course they deny it. We expect them to deny it. But the meaning of hashtag Black Lives Matter on that sign with a privileged and an arrow pointing to the little white girl, in no uncertain terms, says only Black Lives Matter. That little white girl, even if it's my daughter, is what they're saying, is less important. It is disgusting. This is what we're descending to so fast in our culture. It's not my culture anymore. I have no intention of living amongst that crap ever again in my life. Let's read this. This is how bad it gets. This is really symbolic, folks. Look at this woman here. These are the protesters, the so-called protesters. Rioter loots cheesecake from a cheesecake factory in Seattle. How is it that anyone with a straight face can give any legitimacy, or God forbid, take a goddamn knee to these looting, thieving thugs? There is no moral point in any of this. But the fact is, the police and the National Guard are kneeling to these thugs and bullies. That is a symbolic change in our culture. Any of you out there who can move around the U.S., if you're in the U.S., go to the U.S. where it is legal to defend your house, live there, where it is legal to defend your house with a gun. Because I tell you, this is going to only get worse, and you're going to need to defend your house, and you're going to need to have the right to defend your house. Find those states, those municipalities that defend your rights, and move there. Do it as soon as you can. Let's move on to the next group of crap here. Take a look at this, guys. This is going to turn into a long session, I'm afraid, because I'm not even close to the really... I might have to end it short and finish it tomorrow, because I got a lot of stuff here that I think is important. Breitbart News reported John Legend, Natalie Portman, and a bunch of other celebs sign a letter to defund the police. Well, I'm not against, let me state this right up front, I'm not against looking at other ways that we can protect our citizenry. I've spoken about this from time to time in the past. To be honest, I think we should be training all kids on how to use a gun in high school. And we should make it a citizen's right to defend and protect the peace. All citizens, their right and duty to defend and protect the police. Not the police, but the public. So that if anything goes down, all citizens are trained in the use of their handgun, and all citizens can be called upon to use it in the protection of others or in the prevention of crime. It's not a perfect system. I don't know if it would work out, but it would have to be thought through very, very carefully. It could be required all citizens to take a refreshing license periodically. And that would reduce the need for police. So I'm in favor of analyzing, proposing other solutions for protecting the public and enforcing the law. But we cannot, our society will not function without some mechanism to enforce the law. So let's have a look at what they say in here. Of course, we're going to get some of the same old. Black communities are living in persistent fear of being killed by state authorities like police, immigration agents, or even white vigilantes who are emboldened by state actors. Look at that. There has been a number of black on white murders specifically because the guy was out to kill Whitey recently. I don't know of any recent white on black murders, specifically just white guys going out there to kill a black guy because he's black or a black woman or whatever. But these actors living in their ivory towers, getting the only information they ever get from other actors living in their ivory towers, spewing the same lies back and forth, they actually believe this crap. That there's white vigilantes out there hunting down black people. There aren't. This is not like 1670. This is not even like 1820. We're living in 2020, you morons. And these black communities are not living in persistent fear of being killed by the state authorities like police unless they're out there robbing, stealing, selling drugs and threatening the police. No, they're afraid of being killed by gangs in their neighborhood. Gangs that are mostly black, not all. There are Hispanic and there are probably white gangs in poor white neighborhoods. I don't know that much about the situation. But those people in those poor neighborhoods are the honest ones are not afraid of being killed by the police. They're afraid of being killed by the local gangs. This is where these stupid celebrities, I can't stomach those people. They're such pretentious, nauseous idiots. Read from the top. According to the Urban Institute in 1977, state and local governments spent $60 billion on police and corrections. In 2017, they spent $194 billion, a 220% increase. Okay, fair enough. That's a big increase. But let's break it down. In 1977, you would be lucky to make $10,000 a year. Or maybe $10,000 a year was approximately a regular working guy's salary. A regular working guy's salary today in the U.S. will be about $50,000 a year. That is a 500% increase. The cost of living increase from 1977 to 2017 is in the order of 500%. So in other words, they're trying to lead you to believe that the cost of policing has gone up when in fact, inflation adjusted, it looks like it's been cut in half. Those of you who are old enough to remember 1977, you can remember that 25 cents could buy you something back then. My first jobs in those days, I was paid $3 an hour. $3 an hour. $3 an hour is $6,000 a year. Now that was an entry-level job. I was 16 years old. In 1977, I think I got a higher job that summer, but it was only temporary. I think I made $6 an hour. $6 an hour is $12,000 a year. And that was a pretty good job. That was a high rate of pay for 1977. $12,000 a year. Those jobs today pay about $60,000 a year. So you're into about a 500% increase. And these morons, that's just another one of the ways that these idiots lie to us all the time. And this letter here, let's read this, was initially started by the organization going by the name Movement for Black Lives, along with Black Lives Matter co-founder Patrice Cullors. So there you are. Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they want to defund the police. There's no surprise there. They want to run unimpeded through the streets, molesting, abusing whoever they disagree with. This is a totalitarian movement like no other we've seen in the West. Black Lives Matter, and Black and Antifa and a number of others, and the feminist movement in general. These are the totalitarianisms. And I hate to tell you, they're winning if they haven't already fully won. They have humiliated the police by forcing them to bend knee to them. This is not bending knee with them. This is bending knee to them. Let's have a look onward again. And we're on the topic of celebrities. We got this, in my opinion, a complete moron. Billie Eilish says white people who insist all lives matter should just shut the fuck up. How what a surprise. And if I'm not mistaken, this Billy Dick is white. If all lives matter, why are black people killed just for being black? Eilish asked. Well, they aren't. You complete, utter, idiotic moron. Black people are not anywhere in the West getting killed just because they're black. I'm absolutely fed up with this nonsense. Billie Eilish has condemned white people who insist all lives matter instead urging them to recognize their own privilege. Yeah, the privilege of that guy who tried to defend his store who was kicked unconscious, right? That privilege, Eilish. By the way, there are an enormous number of poor and suffering white people in the US and in the world as well. What you've got against them, Billy Dickhead? Reading from the top. Writing in a message posted to her Instagram, the singer-songwriter, and they're using those terms incredibly loosely, anybody who can rhyme two words like pat, bad, or whatever together is considered an artist today. That's nonsense. She said she would lose her mind if she hears one more white person deflecting from the ongoing targeting of black people by law enforcement. Okay, I hope you're listening to this. I'm taking you up on your challenge. Challenge accepted, Eilish. Okay? Law enforcement are not targeting black people. You complete and utter simplistic idiot. I hope that causes you to lose your mind, if you have one. Read from the top what little Eilish says. You are privileged whether you like it or not, Eilish continued. Sure, yeah, I was privileged to be raped in court, family court. Wasn't that a privilege? Yeah. I had a privilege to sweat dog myself through work for 22 years in the chemical industry. I had a privilege to build businesses all on my own. Oh, it was such a privilege, right? There was no frickin' funding. Reading onwards. Society gives you privilege just for being white. Never. Not once in my entire frickin' life. The only privilege I've seen people get for being whatever color skin they are is for being a minority in Canada and the US. In fact, it is in the law in Canada. It is written. There is structural racism against white people in the law in Canada. And that is not a joke. I've seen legal advertisements for jobs that said no white men in no uncertain terms. It says you can apply if you are a minority, if you are black, if you are a woman. All of those categories together, when you add them, if you were, all those categories together, it was all intended to exclude white men. And it's legal because Canada's Constitution says, identifies all the groups that cannot be discriminated against. And if you read it carefully, the only group that is not prohibited to discriminate against in Canada is white men. That is the only group. They listed out all those groups for that same exact reason. It is legal to discriminate against white men in Canada. And in 1984, all these affirmative action programs came out and they had the same wording. They listed out all of these groups, everything except white men. And affirmative action was there used to give special pleadings, special resources, special funding, special jobs, reduced barriers for everybody but white men. And it's been increasing ever since. If we want to be honest about this, we're going to start talking about that. I'm starting to talk about that. Some people are as well. But there is no systemic racism against anyone but white men in the West. This is demonstrable. It's written in the law and policy. I'm going to pause here to recognize Sean Tower for his ongoing generous donations to Studio Brûlé. And Sean says, black man throws 5-year-old off balcony at the Mall of America, yet never deemed racist. If we ever have a real conversation about racism, the black and Asian communities will not like the results. This is true. But you notice that, I have to say it, the Asian community don't play the race card. Even though they could, by the laws in many cases, they don't tend to play the race card. It's these Black Lives Matter people who always playing the race card. And feminists. You can be poor, you can be struggling, and still your skin color is giving you more privilege than you realize. What a fucking bigoted asshole Eilish is. You are a complete creepy bigoted asshole, Eilish. You know that? Reading on. She added that white privilege allows white people to live their lives, quote, without having to worry about surviving simply because of your skin color. No, that's the same for everybody. Have you not seen the articles, the cases of black people killing white people exactly admittedly because they were out to kill white people? There was a case in California not long ago. She's a racist bigot, absolutely. A complete indoctrinated moronic idiot. And our media flags her up to the top because she's spitting out the authorized ideology of our age. Let's read from the top. If all lives matter, why are black people killed just for being black? They aren't, moron, she asked. Why are immigrants persecuted? They are not. Immigrants are welcomed and supported in the West. Illegal immigrants are not welcomed always, although a lot of them still are. If they apply legally, they are welcomed, supported, and given extra opportunities, often above citizens born there. Read on. Why are white people given opportunities that people of other races aren't? They are not. You're just spewing out lies and propaganda, you fucking moron. The slogan, hashtag Black Lives Matter, does not mean that other lives don't. Yes, it does, in fact. That's exactly how it's used, and you have to be a simplistic idiot not to see it. It's calling attention to the fact that society clearly thinks that black lives don't fucking matter, and they fucking do. No, society does not think that. And society isn't this big monolithic uniform item like you're claiming it is, you moron. Individuals have different opinions, and we cannot legislate opinions. You're going to find individuals that hate black people like you find individual black people that hate whites and Asians that hate blacks and so on. That is going to happen. It is an unavoidable feature of being a human being that there is going to be hatred. Let's read on. Eilish's message has been liked more than 4 million times on Instagram, guys. Listen to that. 4 million times on Instagram. These are the people who are becoming the voters of the world. These are the people putting black squares all across their social media. These are the people who are promoting or looking the other way when a white man gets kicked to death or unconscious. These are the people who soak up these lies that the police are structurally racist against black people. 4 million times. What we're seeing here is the rise of racism. Not a movement against racism. What we are seeing here is an exact example of how racism is placed into the minds of a community and grows with hysteria. It's through on lies, misdirection, misrepresentations, and the blaming of a scapegoat for all of the world's problems. They're doing this to white men as we speak. Feminists started it 60 years ago. They took up furious hatred for white men and they brought themselves into universities and they started spewing out lies that they called research and bullying everybody in sight. And they've succeeded. Any of you guys who are white out there, beware. Find yourself some kind of a new place to live if you're living amongst Antifas and White Matters people. And even folks, black people out there and Asian people out there, if you're going to live amongst those people, they're going to turn on you if you don't propagate their ideology of hating white people. This world is not going to be safe for anyone while we allow this kind of hateful thinking take control of our world. And it has. It is being encouraged. This kind of hateful thinking is being encouraged by the elite. It's being encouraged by Obama. It's being encouraged by ex-President Bush and Clinton. It's being encouraged by Soros. It is endemic in all our universities. As we saw, it's in the health profession. It's in the socialized profession. It's through all of our universities, our education system. The police are bending knee to these bigots. It is only going to get worse. So here it is. Here back just in April, Eilish was crying because she's criticized for a swimsuit photo. I don't know why I capped this. This is from a long time ago. Here's the little bigot right here. Another one of these incredibly privileged silver spoon girls, virtue signaling for her fans. She's a force to be recognized, they say here, all without allowing herself to become sexualized by an industry that almost demands female artists to parade around half naked. This is another myth they're creating here. She is successful because she's a woman. The industry does not sexualize anyone. Women sexualize themselves and sell their images for profit. This is not pushed by the industry. This is the reality that these stars flash their boobs, flash their butts because they know that gets them money. Eilish refused to play along wearing baggy clothes, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why I'm going to read this. She's wearing baggy clothes. Yeah, she does look like a bag woman. Now, take a look at Eilish's face here in all these pictures. Take a look at those eyes. I want you to take a look at those eyes. I know this is it's a bit of an exercise here. Those are cold, psychopathic eyes to me. Take a look at those eyes again. Take a look at those eyes again. What do they suggest to you? There she is again. All of the psychopathic bitch killer eyes. And there is Karla Homolka, a serial killer who killed I don't even know how many women with her husband Paul Bernardo, and killed her own sister and raped her own sister and finally got caught. Why do they look so familiar? And they share the same kind of hate attitude. There's Karla Homolka, a psychopathic serial murderer. There is no empathy in those eyes. You're exactly right. There's Carla Homolka again. So when I'm not going to bother with that. Some guy said all the entertainers in the world are saying the same thing. We got to defund the cops, and we got systemic racism, blah, 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 blah. I don't care if every last person on the world says the same thing. Every last one. It doesn't make it right. They are wrong. They have an agenda, and they're full of crap. The truth is not up for a vote. It's not a popularity contest. I don't know who said that first, but in any case, it's a good quote. Eilish says white people who insist all lives matter should just shut the fuck up. I think we've gone over enough of this now. Let's go on to another topic. And here is the general celebrities. Did we go over this already? I think we did, eh? Yeah. I think there's a duplicate on here. Tell me in the comments, did we go over this celebrities letters? Yeah, we did. Okay, here we go now. I want to talk about Trump and his, did I get this up here right? Yeah. I have to reshare this here. Okay, so I'm going to share this screen in a different way, and hopefully you guys tell me whether you can hear the sound coming out of this. I don't know whether it can. So this is some parts of Trump's speech to the nation dealing with this exact same issue just a couple of days ago. You may have seen some of this. Whoops, why does that not go full screen here? That's not full screen. Let me try this. That's a little better. Okay, so let's have a look at it here. Can you guys hear this? In the comments? Let me know if you're hearing the volume. No volume. Okay. Let me try this again then. Okay, this should work. So I'm going to start that over again. Let me know if you hear it this time. Oh, that's very low. I'm going to start that once again, so bear with me for a second here.
My fellow Americans, my first and highest duty as president is to defend our great country and the American people. I swore an oath to uphold the laws of our nation, and that is exactly what I will do. The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities, and as their president, I will fight to keep them safe. I am your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters. But in recent days, our nation has been gripped by professional anarchists, violent mobs, arsonists, looters, criminals, rioters, Antifa, and others. A number of state and local governments have failed to take necessary action to safeguard their residents. Innocent people have been savagely beaten, like the young man in Dallas, Texas, who was left dying on the street, or the woman in upstate New York, viciously attacked by dangerous thugs. Small business owners have seen their dreams utterly destroyed. New York's finest have been hit in the face with bricks. A federal officer in California, an African-American enforcement hero, was shot and killed. These are not acts of peaceful protest. These are acts of domestic terror.
Okay, so let me see what's going on here. Oh, there's a little bit more.
That is why I am taking immediate presidential action to stop the violence and restore security and safety in America. I am mobilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
You've been reluctant to comment.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause here for a moment, and I want you to just think about what Trump is saying there. He identified Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. He rightly identified the rioters as looters, thugs that needed to be stopped. Now, let us have a look at what Rex Murphy from Canada says here. And just bear with me a second. Well, what I might do is just let's contrast this to what Canada's Trudeau says in response. Trudeau was asked what he thought about Trump's actions here just, I think, a day or two ago. So let's have a look at the difference here. And you'll see what the globalists are like, for sure. And I've put this back on full screen for you.
Yeah. You've been reluctant to comment on the words and actions of the U.S. president. But we do have Donald Trump now calling for military action against protesters. We saw protesters tear gas yesterday to make way for a presidential photo op. I'd like to ask you what you think about that. And if you don't want to comment, what message do you think you're sending?
It is a time to pull people together, but it is a time to listen. It is a time to learn what injustices continue despite progress over years and decades. Black Canadians and racialized Canadians face discrimination as a lived reality every single day. There is systemic discrimination in Canada, which means our systems treat Canadians of color, Canadians who are racialized differently than they do others. We need to be allies in the fight against discrimination.
About racism, anti-Blackness, or violence.
Okay. So, folks, I'm guessing that that you could see a difference there in the response of the two. Our child emperor has stood alongside of the Antifa people without saying so. He claims that Canada has systemic violence, systemic racism against Black people. We don't, not even remotely. What he is doing here, he refused to answer the reporter's question as usual. He refused to acknowledge that there was a need to shut down the rioters. He is condoning, without saying as much, condoning the behavior of the rioters. This is unbelievable. And it is why I'm trying to get through to folks here that we have turned a corner here. It's a very bad corner. We have local leaders across the U.S. standing and kneeling in front of and capitulating to rioters, bullies, domestic terrorists. We have Canada with a so-called leader, our little child emperor, who refuses to denounce these behaviors in the U.S. or in Canada. this is I can't overestimate or emphasize how significant all of this is right now. Before we go further on that, well, I better just get through this video because it's getting a little bit awkward here to switch between these different applications. So I'm just going to play this next bit. This next bit here, folks, is showing you how ideologically indoctrinated many of our leaders are now. It has literally become a religion. You'll see the difference. They are repeating a creed that is written by an Antifa leader and is being read out, and it is exactly like being in a Catholic church where you are required to repeat the apostolic creed. You're going to see the crowd. It's creepy to my mind. It's very creepy. It's cringy. But this is what's going on a large scale across our culture right now. Leaders are bowing to these bullies, these terrorists, and it's becoming a religion. They accept the creed as it is, that there is systemic violence against Black people, that there's a need for reparations, that the land that they are living on is stolen land. They're having people repeat it like they're in church. This is the purpose of propaganda, to humiliate the people. How can you go back from that? If you bow to them, you take a knee to these terrorists, you repeat their prayers and their creeds as if it were true, you can't back out of that. It can't be done. And bear with me, I'm going to play this for you. It's a few minutes long, but it's worth seeing just how indoctrinated and how far down we have gone here. Bear with me a second here.
About racism, anti-Blackness, or violence. I will use my voice in the most uplifting way possible. And do everything in my power to educate my community. I will love my Black neighbors the same as my white ones.
Okay, I just wanted to pause here for a moment to let that sink in. It is culty. It is cultish. They are, some of these ideas you would say, okay, you can't argue with that, but that's not the point of it. And that's just like that fellow who made the point of that the purpose of propaganda is not really to lie to you, it's to humiliate you. The purpose of this is to humiliate you. A humiliated person can't turn around without shaming themselves much further. So they are being taught that they just listen and repeat the beliefs of the Antifa, listen and repeat the beliefs of feminism. In other words, you're going to believe the lies going forward, and you putty in their hands. I'm going to pause here for a moment and recognize Xeranx for his generous support of Studio Brûlé. Xeranx says, did you see Democratic candidate Marianne Williamson having her white members pray to Black members in her church congregation? This, I didn't see that personally, but I don't doubt it at all. There is this intent to make white people grovel, and then the ultimate attempt is to pin all the problems of the world on white people, and it's socially condoned to blame white people for everything. Then there comes the reparations for past wrongs that you had no part in, and then comes the reparation or the correction of your living on stolen land. Then it's your jobs, because you don't deserve your jobs. You got them because you're white. It's your houses. It's your money. It's everything. This does not have an end point. This is an exact repeat of every other bigoted, racist movement, totalitarian movement in history. It starts this way and it grows. There is no way to turn these people around. And the police, the National Guard, the military have bent their knee towards these people. Let's look at this one. This is the mayor of Olympia, Washington, who is surrounded by a crowd, and she has been forced to kneel and grovel before this leftist crowd as well, feminists and whatnot. It's cringy, but you really need to see this. Just watch this one.
I've been trying to learn through this whole process, and I've got so much more to learn. It's not about me. I've got it, you know? It's about you and these voices that we've not listened to. And I promise you, this council is so united about making sure that your voices are heard as we move forward through this incredible moment in history. We are all living something that's not happened for 100 years with the COVID crisis, and now the elevation of the voices that we should have been listening to for 400 years. We are on stolen land. We have come into this world and taken, and it's now time for white people to give back and make sure.
Listen to that.
And make sure that as we rebuild out of this crisis, that we rebuild based on equity. And I know this council is committed to this. I know the staff and the administration of the city of Olympia are committed to that. I want you to trust. It's hard for you to trust a white woman, I know, but trust that we are doing our best. And I love this town so much, and I don't want to destroy it. And I want to destroy it. For all of your future. And so please think about that. When you're angry, it's like direct your anger towards the serve. But these small businesses downtown do not deserve to be destroyed. So I am literally on a knee begging you to work with us and to stop perpetuating violence. You know, we don't learn from that. We're not need to protest. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking because you guys have the messaging already. And I want to turn this mic over to all the people of color here, and I want to hear the black people, I want to hear the white people just sit down, shut up.
Come on, hey, clear away for her. She gonna tell him something.
Okay, folks. White people. White people, sit down and shut up. White people, make reparations. White people, you're living on stolen land. White people, you're all evil. You don't deserve a voice. This is what she's saying. This is what is going on in your government, in your leadership, and it's applauded right across the country. It's applauded by the celebrities. It's applauded by these singers, actresses, whatever, who don't really know anything at all. Where do they really think this is headed? This is bigotry and racism being raised as moral and just. Now, check here this next clip where you're going to see the her and the police kneel to the Antifa people. Keep in mind, these Antifa people and their groups have been responsible for burning down historical sites. They've been responsible for beating people to death, for looting and destroying property. They are preaching the destruction, they're preaching hatred of white people. This is Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And they and the police and the military are kneeling before them. The significance of this cannot be overstated. And this just a day or two after Trump identified Antifa and these rioters and other groups like them as domestic terrorists, the police and the military still knelt before them. You can't overestimate how significant this is. So let's watch this next bit here.
Hey guys, it's Cheryl here. Could you please come out and just feel Yes!
The mob is demanding that the police kneel. Listen to that. The mob is screaming and demanding that the police come out and kneel before them.
I talked to Aaron, our chief of police, and I know he's trying to work with you guys. So your game, I'm gonna do it. So I know the sheriffs can't, but the sheriffs can if they want to.
You know you want to. It's a free country.
I know.
Yeah, you have the First Amendment right too. Join us.
So I'm gonna come across this way. I know you're gonna be cool.
Come on, you guys, join us. Take a knee. 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 Take a knee.
So I apologize for the mic here and the audio, but there you have it, folks. I don't think you can see a better example of a hysterical, screaming mob demanding that they be knelt before. And you can hear in their voice, there's nothing honestly sincere about them. This is not a sincere about their issues. This is the demand that the police bow to them. Now, I'm going to switch over to some other screen captures here, and then we're going to call it call it a day here. I've got a couple of more things I wanted to show you. And this is all for living ex-presidents draw a sharp contrast with Trump on so-called systemic racism. I can't help but recognize that Trump is the only non-deep state person amongst the whole bunch. He's the only one refusing to acknowledge these terrorists as anything but terrorists. And these people, these are career politicians we're looking at here. All these other ex-presidents. And of course, Obama always knows exactly where the camera is, so he's looking straight up at the camera. He's a consummate politician. He has some kind of instinct to always know where the camera is. But there you have all of the ex-presidents and Trump and Melania. The others are parroting the same feminist crap that the US has systemic terrorism. Let's read from this article. 4 US presidents spoke this week about systemic racism and injustice. They used their platforms to illuminate the humanity in all Americans and to decry the dehumanization of some. And they summoned the nation to confront its failures, make change, and come together. Notice that they are really appeasing the mob here with these words. They are not expressing they're not decrying the dehumanization of the shop owners, the people who are beat unconscious, the police who are shot dead. No, they are decrying dehumanization that's claimed by these arrogant, ignorant feminists who are inciting racism and violence and hatred. Read from the top here. A 5th US president spoke instead this week about using military force to dominate Americans who are protesting racial injustice. The lie in this one sentence is incredible. They are not protesting racial injustice. They are looting, thieving, lying, tyrannical bigots. The rest of those presidents have no spine, or they're on board with the deep state and their desire to create a one world government. None of those riots are going to affect any of these guys. They fly wherever they want in the world to the best of everything with full protection. They have their own police. They have their own army around them all the times. They don't care about this stuff. Read on. He declared winners and losers among state and city officials trying to safeguard their streets. And with his re-election campaign in mind, he sought to apply a partisan political lens to the national reckoning over racial inequities. The fantasy of racial inequities. Let's read on from this article here. There's a couple of more quotes to go through. They're all saying essentially that Donald Trump is not doing a very big part of his job and we have to stage an intervention, even if that intervention is not coordinated, historian Michael Beschloss said. Foremost is the president's job is to try to unite the country, especially in crisis. These statements and gestures are saying Donald Trump is not carrying out these essential functions of the presidency, so we have to step in. So these other guys are really saying that we need to acknowledge and legitimize the mob's angry desire to blame and hate all white people, to make reparations, to take away whatever stolen lands. There's an agenda here. They want to kowtow to these mobs, these ex-presidents. Reading from the top, Trump this week declared himself the president of law and order. and sought to project absolute strength. Although he has expressed dismay at Floyd's death in police custody in Minneapolis and offered condolence to his family, he has not demonstrated that he is listening to and sympathetic with the many Americans who say they have experienced systemic racism, nor has he proposed concrete steps that can be taken to address the problem. Because there isn't a problem to address. How do you address a fantasy that has grown to hysterical proportions? What we have here is one of the largest mass hysterias in humanity. It's coming in human history. It's coming through COVID-19 hysteria. There's a fear being stoked by those in power, and it's coming through these people here, the feminists who have been stoking hatred for 60 years. This is mass hysteria, and there is nothing to fix. There is no law in the books in Canada or the US that could be pointed to say there's systemic racism. There's no public policy. In fact, anytime anyone even remotely hints of that, they are sued out of existence in Canada or in the US especially. This is an absolute lie. It's a lie put about by bullies who are terrorizing the regular citizens of the US for profit and power. Let's read from the top. In the meeting, Obama acknowledged the pain and uncertainty so many Americans are feeling. He explained what he sees as structural problems in the country, from the history of slavery to continuing institutional racism today. They throw this term around as if everybody knows it's true, and never have they ever put up one single example, one policy, one law in any jurisdiction in the US. They cannot point to one. They cannot point to one policy in one small company anywhere in the country. But they still say continuing institutional racism today. And everybody just accepts it and nods like they're in the church of feminism. Feminism says so, so it must be true. Obama sounded a call to action for mayors to review and reform their use of force agreements with police, and for activists to mobilize in elections and hold officials accountable. Obama is basically saying, well, riots are a good thing. They're an indication that you're right. The force that's being applied today is being applied by these domestic terrorists. They're terrorizing the leaders and they're terrorizing the country into submission. And it's working. And it's going to work. I'm the bearer of bad news today. He added, this is Obama, I have been hearing a little bit of chatter on the internet about voting versus protest, politics and participation versus civil disobedience. This is not an either or, this is a both and. Such feminist. To bring about real change, we both have to highlight a problem and make people in power uncomfortable. In other words, I'm on board with you, rioters, thieves, thugs, and murderers. I'm on your side. But we also have to translate that into practical solutions and laws that can be implemented. And yet he can't point to a single law anywhere in any jurisdiction, no law, no matter how small, not even in a community social club in a small town, US. There isn't one law or public policy to point to suggest that there is any systemic racism at all. There isn't. So what solutions and laws are they suggesting, folks? They already have a bad guy, the white man. They already have no laws to take off the books. What laws are they going to suggest? They're angry. They've learned that rioting and killing and abusing cops, that works, that gets you power. What kind of laws do you really think they're going to be pushing for as, quote, solutions? It's the final solution. This is the kind of wording, the kind of things that that Hitler proposed in the lead up to power. Let's read from the top. And that was coming from Obama and his entire group of one world government people are on board with this. Let's read from the top. You realize that they are on the exact same page, which is they're anti-Trump at heart, but they try not to use Trump's name in their rhetoric, historian Douglas Brinkley said. If you erase the D and R next to the former president's names, they each represent traditional, magnanimous American approach to a domestic crisis. And Trump is in a weird place where he wants to be George Patton or Douglas MacArthur with a couple of political pages taken from Richard Nixon. Look at that. Just let that sink in. There's no D or R. There's no Democrat and Republican. You're right about that one. This is all one world government people who are happy to let the thugs take over the US. These Antifa people, the feminists, these progressives, they are trying to bring socialism into the US. They are openly saying they're going to tear down the patriarchy. They're going to destroy democracy. They want to get rid of capitalism. These are the same people looting, killing. These are the people that the police and the military are bending to the knee for. These are the people. And the media is backing them up, full strength. If you tell me you haven't got a problem on your hands here, we have got a huge problem. Now, just take a look at some of these images here. This is Antifa. This is the progressive left. These are the police. These are the police, and the rioters are in front. These are the police. We saw the video of the rioters jubilantly demanding the police take a knee to them. These are the police in London, England, also taking a knee to Antifa and progressive feminist groups. This in Washington, D.C., the police kneeling to rioters, domestic terrorists, hate-fueled bigots. Here they are. This is the National Guard, I believe, kneeling to the racists, the bigots, the hypocrites, the liars. Another one. You can find all kinds of these ones on the internet, folks. This is going around not just in the US, and Trudeau is leading the way in Canada to bring Canadians to kneel in front and genuflect to the feminists, the Antifa, the Black Lives Matter people. Because as they all say, they claim that you are on stolen land, that you didn't earn anything that you have in your life. It was given to you because you were white. If you folks want to look back and see what the lives of the average white person was 100 or 200 years ago, you're going to see it was desperate poverty everywhere. It was a struggle to live through the winter, a struggle to live through the depression for everybody. But here, we're being told we didn't earn anything, that we are oppressors just by our skin color. Our skin color is being used to justify hatred and racism against you. That is racism. Your skin color is making you guilty, folks. If you are white, let that sink in. That is the definition of racism. Your skin color is proof of your guilt. This is where the US and Canada are today. Now I think I might wrap up with this next thing here, because this is really quite important as well. Keke Palmer is some kind of popular activist. And she says to the National Guardsmen, and this didn't take long, they just started kneeling in front of the Antifa, the Black Lives Matter, all of these domestic terrorists. They just started kneeling, and it's not even a day or 2 days later. And what is it? Kneeling is not enough for me, says this activist. And here's the thing, I think you guys probably know this, but look, there is never going to be a point where there is enough. They will never, ever be satisfied any more than the Nazis were satisfied with whatever the Jews did to try and please them, whatever capitulations they did. It will never, ever be enough. This didn't even take a couple of days, where this activist, BLM, whatever leader, wasn't satisfied now with kneeling. You have to be fully under her command. Let's read a couple of quotes from this article. Reading from the top. You have to pay attention to what's going on, she told the guardsmen. You have a president that's trying to incite a race war. Think about that, folks. They are blaming white people for everything. They are rioting in the streets. They are beating people to death. They are throwing bricks and shooting cops. They are looting stores of everything. They're setting monuments to blaze. And they're doing it all on the strength of their claim that Whitey's the bad devil. And Trump is saying, we cannot let rioters and bullies and thugs win. And yet they're saying that the president is trying to incite a race war. This is Orwellian. This is flipping it right around. These are the people who blame Whitey for everything. And yet, they are saying that Trump is trying to incite a race war, when Obama, throughout his presidency, fueled those flames every chance he got, and still is fueling those flames. Let's read on. We have people here that need your help, Palmer said in a video. NBC news correspondents, blah, 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 tweeted. This is when y'all stand together with the community, with society, to stop the governmental oppression, period. We need you, so march with us. Government oppression. In other words, you're being oppressed if somebody tries to stop you from looting, burning cars, burning monuments, killing other people. If the police try to stop you from doing that, you're being oppressed. This is what she's suggesting. Let's read on. The guardsman would not consent to leave his post, but he did kneel when another protester asked him if he would take a knee. He did. He was successfully humiliated, which is the point of propaganda. They humiliated the guardsmen, and he can never live that down. He knelt before a rioting terrorist, and he can never walk away from that action. That's what they are succeeding at today, folks. I want to emphasize this. They are humiliating the military, the police, those who are there to protect the peace. They are humiliating them. They forced them to take a knee, and these guys can never walk away from that. They will always be known for kneeling before rioters, bullies, thugs, and protesters. They have to live with that in their minds, that they were cowards and they knelt before the abusers. That is what they did. And that is the purpose of propaganda. That's the purpose of this, to humiliate them, and they can never fight properly back after that. And listen to Palmer here. "That ain't enough for me," Palmer said as the man knelt, and many in the crowd cheered. This is it, folks. If you give in to a bully, it only gets worse. He set his own gravestone when he knelt. He knelt at their command, and now they humiliate him further by saying, "That ain't enough for me," and the crowd cheered. "March with us," she continued, and that's not what she means. She means you are now under my orders. What she really means is that I am now your boss. That's the purpose of the kneeling, and she's admitting it right there. March with us, she orders. She didn't continue. That's an order. You have knelt before your king, your queen. Now I'm telling you what you need to do. Eventually, most of the National Guard members present took a knee. Yes, that's honest person. That's exactly what it means right there. It means you are now my bitch. That's what happens this is what happens when you fly the white flag of surrender. Bending the knee is the same as flying the white flag of surrender. They have gone against the presidential orders. They have bent the knee at the domestic terrorists. They can't walk that back, folks. This is a turning point. There's a lot of these guys going down that road now. I think that's all I have for today. So, folks, watch your backs. And this is a message for everybody out there, not just white people. I got to emphasize this. This racism, this legitimized hatred, this scapegoating of white people is not only going to attack white people. There is nobody who's going to escape this. If you're black, you're going to be amongst people who are going to encourage you to step up your game against whitey. Blame the white man, take his property, take his job, fire him, put false accusations on him. You're going to be ridiculed if you don't appear to be strong enough in your hatred and anger and protestation against whitey. If you're Asian, you could be drawn into that. You're white, you're a woman, you're going to be drawn into that. Nobody is going to escape the malicious, destructive, soul-destroying evil of this movement. It's not just white people who are going to get it, although white people are the target. White people are the main target, especially white men. They're being blamed for everything. Even if you're poor living on the street, you're going to be blamed for it. They're already beating up people for being white. But if you're black, you're going to be beat up or ostracized for not hating whitey enough. If you're Asian, you're going to be pushed into this. If you're Mexican, Hispanic, whatever, you're going to be, this crowd is not going to see you. They're going to see you as a traitor, just like I was treated on the streets of New York City when I was walking with my Jamaican wife. They're going to see you as a traitor for not fighting whitey strong enough. This is just the start. You cannot never appease them enough. They will never say it's enough. They will never say reparations have been made. They will never say the law is strong enough. They will never say it. This is going to go on and on and on, and it's going to escalate and escalate. And you know where the final solution resides, where this is all aiming at. And that is exactly where it's aiming at. So having said that, folks, let me know in the comments or send me a message if you're interested in the patriarchy card. I'm thinking of selling these on a donation for donations of some amount. I don't know exactly what to do with these cards, because each card, if I do start providing them to people who want them, they will have a unique number on them and your name on the card. That's the new design that I showed at first. I may just pop this up here again, see if you can see it. No, I think it's fallen off the. Let me find the card for you so you can see it again. And here is my VIP club membership card for the patriarchy. And you see a unique number will go to everybody here. This chapter number 1 has, I think chapter number 1 will refer to Perseus. And Perseus's task from Zeus is to cut the head off of feminism, destroy it, as Perseus previously did to Medusa, one of the horrible evils of the world. So let me know if this interests you. And as I like to remind folks, one of the most important things you can do every day is to do something you love. Do it every day without exception. It's very important for your mental health. And if you don't have something you love to do, then find something you love to do. And Michael, I thought maybe a $10 donation to Studio Brûlé would be a good way to start with the patriarchy cards. It's a little bit of a job to keep track of it and modify them, send them out and whatnot. So, I mean, if there's not very many of them, then that will just be a one-time thing. But and then I'll stop providing them. But if there's a lot of call for it, of course, we'll provide them for sure. There's a lot of symbolism in Zeus, and Perseus is Zeus's son by a human woman, so he's half god, half human. And so anyways, there's a lot of symbolism behind this. So have a look at that, have a think of it, and be safe out there, even at the worst of times. Remember, do something you love to do every day. And with that, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care, folks.